Today's meeting of the Environmental Advisory Board is called to order on March 15th.
Wait,
Welcome.
my apologies.
No.
We do not have quorum.
Okay, so we'll have to
what?
wait for Glenna.
To recess?
Yeah, we'll wait till we have quorum.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just call a recess, that way the
Okay. Yeah, they, I think, shut it. I think.
Can I ask a question about this
Yeah, call
one?
a recess.
So, it looks good, looks great. But
Let's try this again. Today's meeting of the Environmental Advisory Board is called to order on March 15th. The members of the Environmental Advisory Board were appointed by the City Council, and we serve voluntarily. The board's objective is to provide citizen insight to the City Council and staff on environmental activities within and affecting the City of Clearwater. Agendas of today's meeting are typically on the wall to the entrance to the chambers. Please remember to turn off your cell phones and electronic devices. To ensure a complete record of the board's actions, we ask any individual wishing to speak to clearly state their name and spell it for the clerk. Will members of the board and staff please introduce yourself? To my left.
Hi, my name is Sheila Sullivan. Hello, Marita Lynch.
Jared Leone.
So I'm Micah Maxwell. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer and Interim Solid Waste Director.
All right, thank you very much. Our first item, approval of our minutes. We don't have drafted minutes from our last meeting, so we'll have double duty at our next meeting in April. We'll move on to citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. If there's anyone, please step forward, and you will have 3 minutes to speak on any item that is not on today's agenda. Okay. Then we'll move on to new business items. 4.1, elect a chair and vice chair. I am going to start our discussion and say that I can't make a motion on this item, but I would urge us to look at Marita as vice chair, and I would be open to continue as chair for this year, and then we can have a new chair next year after Marita takes over as vice chair, if everybody's amenable to that. So if someone could make a motion of that, if everybody likes that idea, then we can move forward.
I make a motion to have you continue as chair and Marita as vice chair.
A second.
All right. I agree too. I don't have any opposition, so I guess if there's any comment from the audience, we'll move forward with.
You just need a vote.
Oh, official vote? Okay.
In favor?
it's 3-0, unanimous,
All in favor,
so,
say
yeah,
aye.
all in favor, say aye. There we go.
Thank you.
We're good? Okay, thanks, Nicole. Then we'll move forward with item 4.2, the EAB staff alignment. And thanks, this has been something that I personally have been looking forward to for quite a while and trying to work toward our board being more aligned and in a better position strategically and I guess the way the organization is set up at the city, that we'll be in a place, in a office, department that is a little bit more far-reaching or overarching, which, like our board, the environment, it touches just about everything within the city. So I think with that, we'll let Micah take over and kind of present a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so just thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be now involved with the board. Sheridan, of course, was going to be very involved with the board as well. She's now moved on to City of Largo, and we very much miss her. We will be putting out the sustainability position very soon. We've had some conversations about reclassification with HR, and that's finally coming to a head. So hopefully that'll hit the street soon, and we'll move forward with trying to hire somebody for that position. What we've provided today is just a way, I guess, a path towards trying to create some of the alignment that Chairperson Leone talked about. This is something that we've done with some of our departments. Thought it might be helpful to go through it with the group here as well. Now, I have populated it with a number of things because I can't possibly know all of where everybody here stands on these things, but I tried to populate it in a way that I thought at least made some sense to start the conversation. We can change whatever we want to change, but basically we've sort of patterned it off of, just to give credit where credit's due, the book The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni, and in that he asks 6 questions. We have basically asked these 6 questions of you all and ourselves, and would like to try to gain alignment by answering those things in a group setting. What I would suggest is that today doesn't need to be the day that we finalize this. Maybe the next meeting would be a good opportunity, especially with Mr. Thomas not being here today, and we'll get him a copy of this as well. But it gives everybody an opportunity to think about it, and then we can have some more robust conversation at a future meeting. But the first one there, the question, the objective, why do we exist, really intended to be a very 50,000 foot thing. This I pulled really out of the ordinance. I just yanked it right out of the ordinance and printed it on here. So didn't make any other adjustments other than that. But it's to provide citizen insight to the city commission and staff on environmental activities within and affecting the city. The second, how do we behave? And I know there is some interest in this one. It was brought up a minute ago here. Because this is the values piece, and because you all obviously have your own values and may be able to come to some as a group, I'm not sure. That's for you all to decide. We just decided I decided we would put in the ones that we used, Melody and I and Sam and the rest of the Office of Innovation. These are our core values that we use day to day, and those that you can expect to hold us accountable to as we're interacting with the board or in any other thing, whether we're coming to your neighborhood or whatever, right? So ours are basically authenticity, empathy, and creativity. Those are the things that we all have, and we feel like we all have, and are really important to all of the things that we do in the Office of Innovation. So again, these can all change and be, we can have some of the office staff ones, and then if you all have some you want to provide, that's great too. We can really kind of deal with it however we want. It's a little different than obviously a business setting, so we can work through that. The powers and duties, really again, just yanked this right out of the code. Identify and assess significant environmental objectives, and review and provide recommendations to the City Commission on selected environmental programs and projects. Basically the business definition for the board. The one right below that, the how will we succeed? While we usually generate this in sort of a brainstorming session, and creating some strategic anchors based on that. I just tried to think of a couple here, so I didn't pull this out of the ordinance or anything like that. Though themes I did try to pull out of there, and basically, they're pretty basic. By staying ahead of major issues through a multi-year planning when possible, by being clear about our objectives, by focusing on policy issues. That brings us down to the fifth question. What is the most important thing right now? Typically, we focus on like a 3 to 6 month, 9 month period. Of course, we have 4 meetings a year with this group, and more if we need them. So it's limited, so it maybe makes sense for it to be a sort of a year-long thing for the board itself. And again, we can change this. I made this one up because it seemed important to me as I was looking at some of the previous meetings and how our staff worked with the board, and what might make sense in trying to make all of this work. And it seemed to me that trying to create a work plan that was really focused not only on the present, but really into the future, really looking at what's going on the next 2 years, ensuring that staff is communicating that, hey, we're going to be doing these things. These are short term. These are longer term that we need to be thinking about, because some of these projects we do, of course, are design starts maybe a year or 2 prior. And, if y'all are looking at it by the time it's been designed, then, you may have missed out on some real great opportunities to make some comments on the whatever the project is, or the program. What I thought was maybe just trying to do the things we need to do to make sure that you have enough information about what's happening the next 2 years to feel comfortable, to feel like you were informed enough to operate as a board. The section right below that, the defining objectives, those 5 things are the things that I, again, put in as items that I thought we needed to do, specific items that we need to do to make sure that that's achieved. Again, these may change, these can change. This is one person's thoughts, not y'all's. So we can amend any of these that we want to. I have color-coded them just to kind of identify some scheduling of when we might do these things. Again, that part of it can change too. The orange is March, yellow is April, blue is July, green is October. And of course, we can have other meetings in there too as needed. But they include determine what significant environmental objectives are. That's really just from the code again. Build a work plan to include timelines and expectations for each item. Identify a list of major items and their decision timelines based on objectives. Communicate and discuss challenges to meeting board expectations, and approval by the EAB of whatever that plan is. You can see that one's the green one, that one's in October, so that we then are set up for that next couple of years here. Below that, the standard operating objectives, sort of the definition for that is those things that we need to keep doing despite that most important thing. What are the things that we need to keep going on despite trying to figure out the next 2 years? So I've identified the near-term issues. That's an item that we have on the agenda for today. Review the 5-year capital budget. Identify legislative priorities for the next year, which I have in July. I put it there because that's kind of, the council usually does theirs in October, so I felt October is a little late. So if you all have things that you all want to bring up as state legislative items next year, that would be the timing for that. Green print updates as we're working through the implementation of green print, and then whatever board discussion items that you all may have that are of interest of you. Below that is just a list of who must do what. I put in 3 individuals. I should have just put in Nicole Sprague as the city clerk's office, because that's who's here. But you have me here as the board liaison. To assist the board in the performance of your duties, to manage our staff time request. I think in the code there's an 8-hour limit. There's a number of things, frankly, that we'll already have all the information on or be well passed on. So I don't anticipate that 8-hour thing being a major issue going through some of our conversations, but it may, and I'll let you know if it does. The city clerk's office, distribute agendas, record meetings, and provide meeting minutes. Oops. And then the EAD, to meet attendance requirements, determine significant environmental objectives. Again, we can change this, we can add to these things, we can move them around. But this is sort of an outline and what I wanted to bring to you for initial conversation and then some future conversation at the next meeting, hopefully.
Great, I thank you for the breakdown.
Yep.
I appreciate all the thoughtful work that was put into putting this together. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that there are some things that we can update or amend that kind of fit a little bit more for the board. But yeah, I think this is a great start. So with that, I'll open discussion if anybody has. I think you had some questions before, Marita.
Yeah, well, first of all, this is great. I love this stuff, so this is great. And I look forward to developing a work plan and identifying objectives. I do have a couple of questions, and the first one will show my ignorance, which I apologize for. You said you got this from the ordinance and from the code, and to what are you referring, ordinance and code?
So the activating ordinance for the Environmental Advisory Board, I can pull up the code number, but there is something that basically allows for you all to exist as a board of the city within the municipal code.
Okay.
I'll pull this.
Just send me the link if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can send it over to the whole board. Yep.
Okay. The next question I have is, built into this is a lot of work, which is fine, like brainstorming sessions and actual physical development of the work plan. So I'd like to volunteer. I love this stuff. I'd like to help with the brainstorming and developing the work plan. But do you have a template for that work plan?
Yeah, I think that what we would try to do is use the budget as the list of items and the timing of some of those things. I don't have a specific one, for this group. It kind of depends on what you're interested in, frankly.
Microsoft Project, I think, when they have time.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yep, I'm not sure if we have that one, but we can certainly,
Something,
let me
sure
check in on it. Yeah, something like that, some sort of Gantt chart or something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And when you're talking about duties and responsibilities, my question was, who is responsible for the work plan, putting tasks with timelines with ownership?
Yeah, I think that,
And that would
really creating it is the board, and making sure that we're implementing those things that we've identified is probably us with a mixture of y'all in it as well.
Yeah, I think a good example, sorry to I didn't mean to interrupt, would be like last year when you worked on the Ready for 100 ordinance and putting that in action and developing it from us, from our discussion to creating an ordinance that can go to council. And I think that's essentially what we're trying to do, is determine what items like that we might want to pursue throughout the year. And then like we did that time, you kind of took the the lead on that and pursued that, and then we can do that during a discussion as well, and figure out what the work plan and flow would look like.
And had there been a plan in place, we could have had a timeline associated for when it would be developed, when it would be here, when it would be to come.
Yeah.
But that leads to my next question. If we are setting this criteria and putting out our scope of activities, are we limiting ourselves? Because similar to Ready for 100, that didn't come, that was kind of an ad hoc type thing.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it does. That's really that standard operating procedures section. We don't want to miss out on whatever those things are. So if those items are not enough or need to be a little different to identify those, I tried to bring that in for the board discussion items, but it can be whatever. We can put whatever we want in here for something like that. But we agree we need to, you need to be able to react to something that's happening that we couldn't predict. We just wanted to make sure that you all didn't have to predict everything, that you had some idea of kind of what we've got and how we've tied it into the budget, rather than just handing you the budget and going through to try to figure out where you might have some links. Try to be as upfront about where we think the links are, and then if you all think they're different or identify some new ones, we can put those in as well.
Yeah, and lastly, I really appreciate this because I always felt like we were playing catch up. We'd hear about something that was happening and think, oh gosh, I wish we had been involved in that. So the words that you used about being ahead of time and looking at things, I really appreciate that. Hits a very important issue with us and addresses it. Thank you.
Yeah, overall, I think that's the goal, is
Yeah.
for us to,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
not just be ahead of major issues, but to also be able to maintain our ability to be flexible when things do come up and try to pursue
Yeah, it's great.
new things. So, I'm sorry, Sheila, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I really, I like how you created this, whole, diagram, color-coded and everything, and I'm happy to see that you included the green print updates, because I think that should be kind of like our golden beacon of light that should help us, make decisions moving forward, so. I look forward to receiving the list of budgetary items that are coming up in the future.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, in the past, we got green print updates quarterly, almost every meeting, I think, last year. Would this be different than those updates, or would that be?
It doesn't have to be. I mean, I think we can set it up with whatever expectation that you all have. We can do it quarterly, certainly. You know.
I don't know if there's enough to do any sort of update that frequently.
Well, we can
or
certainly start, and if it turns out that there isn't, then we can make some adjustment. But we're trying to do that with the council as well. And again, maybe that needs to change at the council level too. I think we need to get a rhythm on it. But I think quarterly seems reasonable at the front end, and if it needs an adjustment, we'll talk to y'all and of course the council for their updates.
Okay. McLennan?
Yeah, I love this. I love the organization of it. What's new to me is, we've never looked at the budget, the city budget, or tied our priorities or our goals to it. And I love that idea. I'd love to be in sync with that and to see what is and what is not in the budget. Year by year, and what we need to advocate for that needs to be in the budget, coming up to the budget each fall. Also, the legislative priorities, this is something new for us, and I'm very interested in legislative issues, and I know and am following 52 environmental bills at the state level right now, many of which are preempting home rule for clean energy, and certainly that's the big one. There are several like now going on, and I mean I'm not quite sure how we can identify next year's priorities. We can probably figure out the trends.
Yeah, and we'll try to provide some of those things as well, some recommendations. The Florida League of Cities provides a good, preview of what they think may be coming. So we may use that as at least a guide to let you know what's being talked about, and then there are going to be other things that legislators may not be talking about that you think are interesting, or we can make some advancement on. So, but we won't go in cold. We'll bring you something to at least start the conversation.
As far as that's concerned, we're in we've got these bills now, so we're talking about, and yeah, so that's something that we can plan ahead for, and have expectations, and maybe, and not until you have an actual bill number, is it hard to say, are you going to have your lobbyists do that, work on that issue? I don't know. I just don't know how that's going to look.
Yeah.
But I love it. I like it.
Yeah, and typically with council, because we do theirs in October, basically it's a list of things that are coming, and trying to understand where the council stands on these things generally. So you don't necessarily have the bill, but we get an idea of what the council cares about, and what they're really passionate about, and we can inform the lobbyists as best we can. When you get into this time of year, it's it's tough, right? It's really in the hands of the lobbyists in many situations, but that's why we want to try to get ahead of it. And the same with the budget, right? I mean, I will say that the budget next year, right, is really being planned right now. We are in the next, it's probably 2 months, going to, really have most of the items that would be in next year's budget. So we go through the process of approval after that, and getting ahead of that a little bit to give you an opportunity to really be able to change or make a recommendation to the council to change the budget not in September or August, but, but in March or April, it probably gives you a lot better opportunity to get those programs or projects through that you're interested in.
I think, I like the idea certainly for planning for the whole year, also, but there are issues that are always coming up that have environmental significance. Like since the last time we met, we've passed Ready for 100. We've had issues with, finding out that, with trees and the care of trees, our trees on public land. And right now there's a complete street project on Drew that is the council is split on, and so these are just examples. And this came up that there was questions about that complete street project. It's like 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And it's being voted on April 17th. So.
Yep. And those certainly, again, under the standard operating procedures, we would anticipate those being in that list. I think for the what's most important right now piece, the goal was really to just get us ahead of it enough, and next year maybe there's a different what's most important, right? And I don't know what it would be, but I think what would become a standard operating objective in that, in whatever the next version of this is to make sure we have a rolling 2 year. So we're always a year ahead of it. So we always have that long-term vision of it, and then those things that are coming up meeting to meeting, we'll deal with. For sure, we don't want to not have those on here. So whatever we think we need in that standard operating objective section, as it relates to that, if it needs to be something like different language than what's in here, let's add something. We can do it at the next meeting, or any comments tonight, you can certainly do too.
I'd like to be more nimble on getting and responding to things as they come up. So, how do we do that?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to ask is, today, are you looking from us for more insight into what you've kind of developed here? Because I know, like what Glenna just said, I'd like to see on as far as how do we behave. I think being flexible and transparent, I think transparency and flexibility are two things that we should incorporate.
Write those down.
Yeah, I would agree. Transparency is the one thing I didn't see on the list here. How we behave.
And so
That's the only thing that's missing.
to answer the question from the chairman as far as what we want today, we certainly can take comments, but I also know it's not necessarily fair to give you a document at the meeting and expect you to be able to fully
Certainly.
comprehending and have a conversation about it. So
Certainly.
anytime, either today or between now and the next meeting, if you just want to email me comments, that's fine, or you can just bring them to the next meeting.
But since we're talking about how to behave, I would add integrity to that. Unless authentic is kind of integrity. Is that kind of what you guys were thinking?
I couldn't hear that, I'm sorry.
I said I would add integrity, and then I said, when you included authentic, is that kind of aligned with it?
So I think it aligns with it. It's not, usually what we do is there's, sort of three groups. The core values, which is, these are our core values. The permission to play, which are those things that, in essence, if you don't have them, you cannot be a part of the Office of Innovation or an employee of the city, right? Integrity, in my mind, would fit into that role, right? Melody and I may have one or two of the core values, and not all of them individually, but both of us are going to have that integrity piece, or we're not going to be here.
Yeah.
So it's definitely associated, yeah.
I think it's important for
Yeah.
a board member.
I think it's similar, but like I see integrity as like being, accountable, like doing what you say you're going to do and being accountable for your actions. And
Yeah, I think that's a good addition. Yeah, and like you said, if there's anything else anyone thinks of, feel free to email Mr. Maxwell, and he will add this in, and we'll have more discussion on it in April at our April meeting. And then, do we have to vote, or make a vote or anything, or we just move forward as?
I think it would probably be helpful to codify it, at that point, to make sure that we're all in agreement that that's what we've collectively decided to do, even though I won't have a vote, that's fine.
I'm sorry,
No, no.
can I ask that you send, in addition to sending that ordinance, do you mind sending this?
Electronically, absolutely, yeah.
And also, when you include that, could you include that that book you referenced?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
You don't have a copy with you?
No, I
Not
know
right
in
now?
On
the
my
book.
person,
I mean, the name and the
Yep.
last name of the Patrick, whoever. wrote it.
usually do have a copy, but,
I was late. What's the book?
it's The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. I'll email it out, though, yeah.
The Advantage?
The Advantage.
How do you spell his last name? Do you know?
Was that?
Do you know how to spell his last name?
And not off the top?
Okay, then never mind.
I'll email it for sure,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's just, it's just one model, right? It's just the one that I'm most comfortable with, so.
All right, does the board have any other comments? I'll open it up to comments from the audience. If anyone would like to speak, please state your name and, thank you. Oh, boy. Are you okay, Brian?
He just had
I
hip
did not see it.
replacement. He had a hip replacement 2 days ago. What are you doing here,
Hi,
Brian?
I'm Brian Beckman, live in Clearwater, and thanks so much, Micah, this is fantastic to see this, and I just wanted to make maybe one additional comment, and I'll lead into that with how I think it's important you operate this way about having green print be a big focal point, which includes goals that help drive planning, as well as you said, the budget, which is extremely important. I'd also encourage you to potentially include in standard operating procedures the strategic plan. So that helps formulate those, turn in those kind of goals that are in green print into budget items and, moving forward. So I was just reading through the strategic plan today, for instance, and they've got 2022-23 plans and 2023-24 plans in it, and a lot of these things that you would be including in topics are included there. But I would expect that you're probably looking at your strategic plan to help drive what you bring forward. So that's the only other thing that I'd add that comment for under standard operating procedures is to review the strategic plan.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a great addition. Thank you. All right, any other comments? All right, we'll move forward with item 4.3, near-term planning discussion. So I guess that kind of dovetails right into this.
Yeah, so I really wanted to add this in just because I didn't want us to only talk about the alignment and the longer-term stuff. I wanted to provide some sense of some of the things over the next year that, that we'll be dealing with at the staff level, and that, y'all may have some, some strong feelings about or no feelings at all. But I've written down a couple of them. There's certainly, this isn't an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination, but I've included in here on this list building maintenance, the city fleet, reclaimed water master plan, the watershed master plans for the this is for the stormwater, the right-of-way tree management ordinance, or I'm sorry, policy that Public Works is working on. Our solid waste and recycling system generally, not just the recycling element, but some environmental items that we feel are really linked to solid waste. As being in solid waste currently, I'm experiencing a lot of those. And there is a lot of opportunity for positive environmental impact with that group, and also the comprehensive plan. And that we've been going through a comprehensive planning process with the planning department for about a year now. I actually, they reached out to me late last week and asked, they were hoping to try and get either a delay or a special meeting with this group to make sure that you all have an opportunity to comment on the comprehensive plan. Basically, they don't believe they can finish the public comment portion of the comprehensive plan by our April meeting. So they asked basically, can you either delay the meeting a month to March 17th or have a second special meeting? I am indifferent personally. If you would like to have a special one, that's fine. And if you want to bump it, that's fine too. But I wanted to bring that up as just a conversation point. That 17th, I believe, was vetted through the clerk's office, so it should be the right date. And it is available if we want to do it. It's a Wednesday.
Is that May 17th?
That is May 17th, yes. And again, we could do either an additional meeting or just move the meeting to that date.
I'm out of the country on that day.
You're out of the country? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd prefer to keep our April meeting as it is. We've had,
What's the date on the April meeting?
it's the 15th, I believe.
Hold on
No,
one
that's a
second.
Saturday.
No, that's a Saturday, yeah.
It's the third Wednesday, it's the 19th?
Yeah, the 19th,
Yep.
okay. Yeah.
I'll be gone then too.
I think this is an important enough issue, and if they request another month, we don't meet enough as it is to be truly
Yeah.
effective. And I think that we should go with the May 17th meeting if we have a quorum.
I'm sorry, you wanted to add a meeting?
Yeah,
Yes, May 17th.
Okay.
yeah, I don't have a problem adding a meeting. I was just saying not to
Not to
not
get rid of
have
the
our,
April
yeah,
meeting.
not to, yeah,
Which
yeah,
is-
I'd rather have our April meeting, and if we have to have
Okay.
a special meeting for May,
Yeah.
then, yeah,
Works.
that's
You can fly
fine.
back for the meeting, right?
You're in spirit on the
Yeah.
internet.
Yeah, I wish. I wish we could call in. I wish.
Yeah, Zoom
I
in,
know.
right?
If Congress can do it.
So that'll be okay, then we'll still maintain our regular April meeting.
That's fine,
and
yeah.
then we can
Yep.
have a,
That's not a problem at all. Yep.
so we started the year a little slow, but we're really gonna have
Yeah.
quite a bit of
Sorry, what day?
time
did
together here the next few months, so.
you say the 17th? Did we say the 17th of May?
I think it's the 17th of May. It's the third Wednesday.
All right.
I can go into more detail on some of these items if you'd like, about kind of what we were thinking. The building maintenance side, we have a new building maintenance assistant director. Just as a matter of background, historically, solid waste was in the same department as general services, which handles our building maintenance and our fleet. So it was the solid waste and general services department. Organizationally, we've changed that a little bit. Basically, we're splitting out the functions. They are currently, they don't have a full-time director. Building maintenance is reporting directly to the city manager at the moment. And solid waste is reporting to me at the moment in the interim. We're trying to figure out what the longer-term version of that looks like, whether or not it makes sense to split them out. We thought it probably did because the functions are a little different. General services has fleet, and it has building maintenance, and they're really focused on our internal equipment and facilities and making sure that those are operating well. And in an effort to get a lot of focus on those areas, we thought splitting it out made a lot of sense. Solid waste is all about picking up, waste, right, from the public and from city facilities, and it's just a different function. So really trying to split those out, figuring out if they're going to go into a different department or become their own animal. That is something that's still being looked at, but that's sort of the change. So what happened was we hired 2 assistant directors. We lost the assistant director of solid waste and general services, and we lost the director of solid waste and general services. And then we hired 2 assistants, one over general services and one over solid waste. So we've split that piece out a little bit so we could try to focus on those 2 things separately. The first 2 items on here are building maintenance and city fleet. A big part of this is trying to reset what our focus is, what the capacity needs are. I can tell you, in talking to the building maintenance assistant director, Mr. Bardell, our ratios as it relates to the number of individuals we have to maintain our facilities and the amount of square footage we have is well off from the national average, and it's well off at the moment because we're pretty short-staffed over there right now. We've got a lot of turnover, and where the national average is like 50,000, our normal count is closer to 89,000 per person, per employee, and currently it's probably closer to 120 to 140,000 because we're so short-staffed. Now, we use contractors and those sorts of things, but we're trying to rethink this a little bit to try to make sure that we're more efficient. Those things that we can reasonably maintain people's employment on, there are some trades that we just won't. We're not going to have the resources to be able to do that, and we can focus on contracting those out and really put our efforts into other things. But that's a big effort that's occurring right now with building maintenance. And at some point, I'll have Mr. Bardot into one of our meetings, and he can talk a little further about the specific things that they're doing.
Could you spell his name?
Bardou.
Yeah, I just, when you say all this, it sounds like a lot of this would fall under like a public works department almost. I don't.
There's been some conversation of that, yeah.
And solid waste, who's the assistant director there?
That is Kervin Saint-Denis,
Could you spell both those names?
Kervin, and Saint-Denis is Staimie. And both started just in the end of January, so still very new at their positions. Peter came from field maintenance for Parks and Recreation after being in, I believe it was upstate New York for several years. And Kervin actually comes to us from, he's been at the city, sort of homegrown here at the city. He's been in about every job imaginable in the Public Utilities Department. Most recently, as a infrastructure maintenance manager for public utilities, working on lift stations, making sure all of the equipment and everything is working on that side of it. So he's been here for quite a while now, and Peter's been here probably at the city for maybe 2 years now. But Kervin probably 20, 25. He's been here a long time. And again, we can have both of those in at various points to get a little more information on these things. The fleet, we've similarly are actually getting a lot closer to being fully staffed in fleet with our mechanics. The challenge there is, the implementation of Greenprint, right? The green fleet portion of Greenprint. It's not I guess that's not a portion of Greenprint, but it's something that we've created based on the tenets of Greenprint, is our green fleet policy. And our attempt is to shift away from carbon emission emitting vehicles to a cleaner fleet. The challenge is it's a different kind of vehicle, right? It's a different kind of fueling source. It's the infrastructure required is different. So, we're really focused on trying to take those that we have and put them through those training processes that can help them transition from the carbon-based to the cleaner fuel. So that is a big challenge there, and mechanics are definitely hard to hold on to right now. So.
So we're low in mechanics.
I'm sorry?
We're short-staffed in mechanics.
Actually, we're pretty close to fully staffed from what I understood in a conversation earlier today. We were, and we've hired a number of them, and we're pretty close to being fully staffed in the mechanics. It's just we need to now shift to professional development for them so that they are able to transition to the newer type of technology.
Would fleet management cover an increase in electric vehicle charging? Would that?
Yeah, so they're very involved in, actually we have a green fleet policy meeting, I think tomorrow, right Melanie? Yeah, so their focus is on the maintenance of the vehicles and then also planning for the infrastructure for those vehicles. One big challenge that we're finding and other communities are finding right now is the power grid, specifically the transformer feeding our various properties, is not always, doesn't always have enough juice to be able to power us the way that we want to be powered. So we're having to look ahead and try to make sure we're planning on that upgrade well in advance, because Duke can sometimes have 12 to 18 months of lag time from when we put in a request to actually installing the equipment. So that is a challenge.
That's why you need more solar panels.
Yeah, and I was going to say that would lead to more possible waves.
Yes, absolutely. And we've identified several places where we might be able to offset that with a solar power application. MSB Garage is our best version of that, because we can't, from what we understand at the very least, cannot shift the power off of that parcel and over the train tracks and the rights of way It means that MSB Garage can generate a lot of solar power, but you can't put it anywhere other than the lights that are in the building. So we've discussed potentially having a robust municipal charging station there for our city vehicles, for our fleet vehicles, so that we can charge them with the power of the sun and, you know, the batteries that we install rather than electric from the electrical grid. So the challenge there, of course, is making sure we install those solar panels at a time in which we think we're going to get those those electric vehicles, so that we're not sitting there with a bunch of solar that's not really doing anything. So we're trying to time that as best we can, and we're getting a clearer picture, Fleet is, on the timing of some of these electric vehicles, where the last year and a half, 2 years has been very cloudy. It's just been hard to predict because of the various supply chain issues when we're going to get these things.
Well, you want to make sure you spend that Charlie Crist money on solar panels before it goes somewhere else.
Absolutely, yep. We have the $1 million that was allocated from Senator Crist. That one, we actually are still waiting on the paperwork from the government for. The year will start when we get that document and sign the document. That's when the clock starts on the $1 million. Now, we have the ARPA piece too, right? We have the $2 million in ARPA that, we have to spend by, I think it's 26, and have encumbered. I believe it's by 25. It's either 25, 26, or 24, 25. I can't remember off the top of my head. But that's the other $2 million that we've got. And I'll tell you the biggest challenge we've had as it relates to the solar panels isn't identifying places to put it. It's the capacity issue with building maintenance, really. Managing the project to do the installation with our building maintenance group right now, because they're so limited, it means allocating resources that are currently being allocated to things like the maintenance of the air conditioning units. We're that thin right now. So, we're trying to balance having a bunch of solar installations with trying to hit the best bang for your buck ones we can.
When you say limited in resources, do you mean people to do it?
Human resources, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And are those unfilled positions?
Those are positions that are unfilled, and probably positions that we may need to look at expanding, not necessarily through additional FTEs in the city, but maybe, shifting resources from one part of the city to another part. But I think that there's probably an argument for reviewing the FTE count in general services. We're still getting into that with Peter a little bit, and that's certainly something we can speak to you all about a little later as well.
So solar panel installation would not be a third party? That would be.
Oh, it would be, but we still have to manage the project, and as they're tapping into our existing electrical system, building maintenance is the one that handles that for the entire city. What we've identified as probably our best opportunity coming up is actually, coincidentally, the general services and fleet building. We think that's probably the best opportunity coming up. It is a massive building with a lot of roof space, not a lot of trees, and we can capture about 80, I think it's 2% of the electricity usage with what we could install there. And it's, I think, if I remember correctly, it's around 600,000, at least the previous estimate we had is about 600,000 of that roughly 3 million that we've got allocated for solar. So it takes up a big chunk of that, provides us with a lot of value, and lets us focus on a installation until we can free up enough resources to try to hit another one. The other relatively robust opportunities, make sure I've got.
Well, let me ask you a question. Didn't you say MSB? Can you say that?
MSB Garage, absolutely. That one's really, but it really depends on when we can get those electrical vehicles. We just don't want to install those ones without making sure that we've got.
Where's the general services building?
It's on off Hercules. Exact address I don't remember, but it's about a block in on Hercules.
Oh, okay. That's where where water is?
It's
water?
well, it's not exactly that site.
Oh, okay.
It's I'll get you the address.
It's across the street and south a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little south of
Okay.
that, right, yeah, it's right, but it abuts the airport as well.
And I don't, I'm just, I don't really, I mean, for somebody who's got solar on their home, I don't, and who really have found in the last 5 years that there's really no maintenance required. I mean, I don't really understand, I'm not sure that I'm understanding what is needed for maintenance. This is just such a low maintenance system.
So my comments are focused on more of the installation process and managing our contractors as we're doing that, rather than the ongoing maintenance. I know that Peter is focused on the ongoing maintenance piece and making sure that that's handled as well, but really it's just having people that can manage the projects, find the contractors, manage those contractors, make sure that they're hooking into our electrical system in a way that, that doesn't mess things up for our, whether it's from the generators to the, to the just general power going through the system. It's really that project management piece that's the big drain right now, not necessarily the ongoing maintenance, from what I understand.
So that wouldn't be in the purview of engineering? That wouldn't be engineering's job?
So we've talked about that, and frankly, there's a fairly substantial capacity issue in engineering as well with the different projects.
Yeah.
We've lost a number of engineers. We've been hiring project managers, so a different type of individual, different level of individual, with the hope that some of them can work into an engineering position. But they're pretty strapped as well with the different roadway projects, with the city facility constructions that are occurring. Now, I will say that the other ones that I think will likely be recipients of that $3 million include things like the Long Center. The Long Center has a very good payback, from what I understand. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. But the process that's occurring right now is a design of the whatever's going to happen with the pool, right? That indoor pool, we're trying to figure out whether or not it's going to remain indoor, whether it's going to be some hybrid version of open air but covered, whether it's going to be uncovered. Those are conversations that the designers are looking at the options so we can decide what's the best approach monetarily, socially, and environmentally to try to figure out what makes the most sense. Now, as part of whatever we do, we would anticipate engineering managing that project, and that solar would be included. At least that's that's what we'll be pushing for as a part of that. The same is true for MSB to some level. The challenge with the municipal services buildings, and not the garage, but the building itself, it's got some decent payback as well. But it's the continued conversation around City Hall. City Council's meeting right now and discussing with staff different hurdles and issues that we're working through, and they're going to talk about it next week at the council meeting about the scope of what City Hall looks like. Does that have some is MSP impacted by some of that? So we want to make sure we get that discussion completed. If MSP is going to be there, then yes, we think that there's probably some good applications there. We want to make sure that's true.
What about the 5 buildings that were identified by the solar feasibility study? I understand that it's back in the hands of consultants, consulting firm. Is it the same?
It is not in the hands of the consultants. It's in the hands of Peter and myself. And what we're trying to do is take their work and apply it to our current environment of lack of staff, right? And trying to make sure we're not hitting what might be a high value from a percentage perspective or a payback perspective, that we can, it's not creating a list that is so long that we no longer can do the air conditioning maintenance and the plumbing maintenance effectively. So we're not, we may be missing out on some cost savings from the solar, but if we do those solar projects, we may have some, fairly substantial issues on the AC maintenance and plumbing maintenance and those other areas. So we're trying to balance that as best we can and be thoughtful about not creating savings just to create expense on another area, but to try to hit the big ones the best we can, the ones that make the most sense. So what we're trying to do is apply some factors to consultants' work that recognize the challenges that we have in the work environment currently. And that includes things like the Long Center's potential construction, right? So those things that they didn't necessarily take into account, but are factors that affect when we do them, when we do the timing of the installation for them. The other big one that was discussed was the wastewater plants. So that's not just one wastewater plant, that's a bunch of them, right? And at the meeting in, I want to say I think it was late February, the 27th, there was the work session that Public Utilities provided or asked for some direction on plant consolidation. And what they determined was that we're going to move towards a consolidation to the northeast plant that we have. Now what that means is we'll be probably decommissioning in the next 10 years those other plants. And, the employees may shift to this new place, right, to the northeast. It's not new, but an expanded version and footprint. We're not necessarily getting rid of the function that they're doing, that folks are doing in those plants. It's just shifting to a different place. The challenge is, do you put solar on Marshall Street if we're going to knock down Marshall Street in 10 years? That's a factor that the consultant didn't necessarily look at. And that just shifts things a little bit, changes some of the priorities. So the wastewater ones were another big one that we looked at. And Countryside Rec is the other two were Fire Station 46 and Countryside Rec. Both of those are solar ready. My understanding that means that we can easily install solar on them. You may have heard that with Fire Station 46, they originally had planned on putting in a peel and stick application because of the high winds that occur out on the beach during storms and the lack of protection of trees and those sorts of things. The engineers felt like the peel and stick was really the only option. The group that or at least that our contractor had selected and was working with went out of business partway through the construction. What we have done is we've isolated the funding that was intended to be used to install the solar on that facility so that when a new peel and stick is identified or some sort of other alternative that can withstand the heavy winds, we can allocate that money to the installation on that facility. So as soon as something comes on the market that can pass all of the required wind loads and those sorts of things, then we'll install it. And it's a little higher level on that facility because of its status as a fire station. But, sorry, you had a question?
No, I was just going to say there were places that were directly hit by a hurricane in this state that withstood, their solar panels withstood. So I think the technology is there, the ability to withstand high
Yeah, I was just
winds
gonna
is there already, and there's places within the state that.
I was just curious what the wind speed, what you're looking for, because 140 miles an hour is.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they are off the top of my head, but we'll get some information on that for you all.
Yeah, I just think about when the storm, I brought up the Babcock Ranch south of here was directly hit, and that was a community that maintained power the entire time. I think there was
Well, we'll
a
see what
panel or two that were disrupted out of.
Right, and my residential panels are guaranteed up to, I think, 140 or so.
I think they have to be.
Yeah, and a Cat 5 is 150.
Yeah.
And a Cat 5, and
Yep.
I think they get burst up to 170. But
Maybe sometime between now and the next meeting, I can try to get something that from the engineers that explains their reasoning for it.
Yeah,
Kind
certainly.
of knows exactly.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
let me see
certainly.
what we can find that kind of gives you some information about why, right?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple questions. In regards to the solar, the PV installations, are there EV chargers included in those plans? Because that would help alleviate the,
Yes, so we are focusing on EV charger installations for the infrastructure for the city and for various parts of the city, right? Not just for city fleet, but we do want to try to do some installations along the streets, in some of our parking lots, those sorts of things.
well, I was specifically meaning, for example, the MSB parking garage, if there was solar installed there, having EV charging stations also included within that project? Or
For the public or for, we are definitely looking at that as the application. Like, most of the power would be focused on EV chargers. Whether or not they would be publicly used or not, we haven't had that conversation yet.
Yeah.
But really, most of that solar power generated at MSB Garage would be focused on EV charging.
Okay, all right.
And that facility is, I guess, solar ready as it relates to the electrical piping to try to get to wherever the chargers would be, the EV chargers. So we did set up in a recent renovation of that. Part of that project was to prepare the conduit and those sorts of things for whatever it was going to be in the future for EV.
Okay.
Yeah. Countryside Rec is the other one that we've talked about. That one's solar ready as well. The only reason we haven't moved forward on that one is that it continues to have some moisture issues that may be roof related. When they complete finding out where this water is penetrating the building, we will then focus on installing the solar panels, but they're working on it right now.
So wait, do I understand what you just said, that at the MSB, the power generated would be to EV chargers? What about supplying the building?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
What
you.
about supplying the building with electricity?
So at MSB Garage, the challenge is getting it off of the parcel. There's some state laws that are restricting our ability to transfer that power to another parcel. It's surrounded by rights of way, including the railroad. So they're legal type issues that we've been exploring different ways to be able to do it. We haven't found one yet.
But the MSB must be its own building with electricity.
It is.
Those are two separate projects. There's the solar for the garage, the MSB garage, which would supply EV chargers, and then solar possibly for the MSB building.
Yes.
Oh,
Two
okay,
separate-
okay.
Two separate
And we can't
solar
really,
projects.
the added challenge with taking it and putting it at MSB is the railroad tracks and getting an easement to be able to transfer it over those tracks if we were even able to.
And these other locations that you mentioned, the fire station, Countryside Rec, which just has humidity issues or water issues, the Long Center, all those, the electricity generated by solar panels would be to power the building and EV chargers is what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah, so either or, in some cases, if we're exceeding the 100%, it would probably be for both. We probably would not separate them out, but in essence, they're going for both, right? It's just the EV chargers are going to increase the capacity for the building,
Thanks.
or the requirement of the building, electrical use of the building.
Thanks.
Okay.
So,
Well, the Long Center, just one more thing.
Yeah.
The Long Center, though, the solar couldn't go on, would probably be the last step of the improvements that are being made in the pool, and, there's a big construction project coming, right, for the Long Center?
the plan would be for engineering to be able to manage that install as part of that larger project. So as they're doing, the larger project, do whatever install we need to do as part of that, because there's going to be some electrical considerations for whatever the decision is. There's going to be, even if it, and I'm by no stretch of the imagination saying this is going to happen, just as a caveat, but if it was to become an outdoor pool right next to it in that large open, if you're familiar with it, open grass field, right? If that happens, then that removes ground-mounted solar potential space. If that doesn't go, then there's some ground-mounted storage or generation space for solar. Those are the kinds of things we got to try to work through as they get through the design. There is a point, I'll have to find out from engineering when that point is, where there's going to need to be some council decision on whatever the path forward is for the Long Center and that natatorium, that's the word I keep on forgetting, the pool.
Is there a timeline on the Charlie Crist money?
It's a year from when we receive and sign the paperwork. So, and this is not uncommon that those allocations will, the paperwork associated with them will lag. We had, last year, I think we almost waited a year for the paperwork to come in. So our year requirement doesn't start until we get the paperwork. We're just waiting on the paperwork. But we do have the ARPA money, so we have money to be able to allocate to installations. We also have money that we've been setting aside for green print implementation. So all in all, we have about $3 million in solar for those installations. I think it's right around $728,000, somewhere in that zone, that have just been allocated through various budgetary procedures into green print implementation. That's outside of our annual allocation that we use for different programs in our operating budget. So that's $728,000 roughly in capital dollars that we have to try to use towards different implementations. And additionally, we're trying to build in the costs of solar and other environmentally positive efforts into the actual capital budget of the project. So it's not a special solar fund necessarily. It's just part of doing business. So that's its own cultural issue that we're trying to push forward right now.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
great.
awesome.
Are you going to give us just a brief overview of the other near-term planning items?
I certainly can. I believe Ms. Sullivan had a...
Sorry.
Well, I'll let you go through. I was going to ask, is there a green, finance program? Because I know the green print talks about green financing, and I was wondering if there's an opportunity to use some of the savings from synergistics to create a green funds grant program for residents to apply to receive rebates for solar panel installation. I know the city of Dunedin offers that. I believe it's 25 cents per kilowatt hour or kilowatt of installation up to $2,000. But we can design a program.
So we have not to date done that, obviously. We've had conversations about putting those dollars back in some way. I think that historically there's been, obviously we haven't done it. We have been trying to just allocate dollars no matter what to those sorts of things. As it relates to the solar rebate program for the low-income housing, that is something that I don't think Chuck's not in here. No, that Chuck Lane is our now Public Works Director, formerly our Housing Director. They were looking at ARPA funds, not the normal ARPA funds, right, but the CDBG ARPA funds that we've received. We talked about allocating some of that, and I believe they did, to a program like that, so that we could have some installation in low-income areas of solar. So I believe that's an ARPA number. I'll get information on that program to make sure that we're there. But really, our focus has been more on trying to build up that $782,000 the best we can over time, not necessarily associated directly with savings, but just trying to put money into a future green print implementation plan. But it's certainly something that we could continue to talk about doing. I think the other challenge with some of the synergistic things, especially right now, when we're seeing really substantial increases in electric rates, things like that, the savings is to some level invisible. It's there, right? Because we're not paying more. We're just not seeing, actual dollar savings that we're putting in our pocket. We're just not increasing the budget because the electric rates went up. We're offsetting, which is just as important, costs that are related to rate increases. That's what we've been seeing recently. Now, when we report out our synergistic information, it takes that into account. So it'll show it as, hey, we're saving this amount, because the rate has increased, it's taking that into account. But as far as hard dollars are concerned, we're not, we would have to increase the millage rate or find some other funding source to do that. But certainly can talk about that moving forward.
One last thing about energy before we move on. Just to be aware that also, that with the IRA, that there's a 30% tax credit savings that's on the other end of each of these solar projects.
Yep.
And the EV projects. So, I mean, I don't know that, have you all figured that out, how to access that? And have you communicated that to staff, like with engineering? Because, I brought that up with engineering, and they're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, and honestly, we haven't been as involved lately with engineering on it, only because their capacity is just very limited.
yeah.
The number of projects that they have and versus the number of people they have is just, it doesn't work right now.
Sure.
So we've really tried to focus it in on the building maintenance side, though, Jeff Walker from engineering has been great trying to provide different opportunities and everything. It's just, when do you have time when you have so many high-profile projects? So, yes, we've been looking at the IRA. Melody's taken a hard look at the IRA information, and I think we have a good idea of opportunities for implementation of it. We've included it, our consultant included it in the calculations, so they included both the cost of installation of solar without the IRA, and then also a version with the IRA. So you could see kind of the savings and how it impacted us in both scenarios. But certainly we would look at trying to implement with the IRA involved. Yeah.
All right.
Lost my place there.
What do we have? Watershed management plans, right-of-way, tree management,
Yep, some of
solid
these were
waste
just me.
recycling.
Pulling stuff out of the budget that I knew, or at least I believed, would be of interest, right? We have, for instance, on the watershed management, we have a couple capital projects that relate specifically to those different watersheds and the master planning of those watersheds. So I would anticipate us through the year, as we get into conversations about those things, I can coordinate with engineering on when the best time is, based on where they are in the projects, but bringing them in and letting them talk to you a little bit about what they're doing and why they're doing it, and not when we're approving it, but as we go through the process of it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be some good points where you can get some good information and have an impact.
Yeah, I think, and like you said, with solid waste and recycling, having our liaison working directly in that department may be helpful for us to kind of achieve some goals too. I just want to mention briefly, because this is something that has come up over the years on our board, and I'm going to now, because I have your ear, trash cans on the beach. I don't know if that's something that has risen to your level yet or not, but we have had that discussion time and time again at this board, that the trash cans are ineffective that are out on the beach, the ones that are actually on the beach themselves. I know that we've said in the past, I don't know if they're there just because if you take a black and white photo, it looks the same from in the 50s as it does now, because those cans are just so, I feel like they're obsolete. If they're not, and there's a good reason why they're still in use, it'd be great to find out why. I know that there's some difference between what's parks and what's solid waste out with the beach, but over time we've just noted that there's no lids on the cans, they're open, and if they're supposed to have liners, a lot of them don't, and stuff gets through them. I think we have a number of other beach communities that have used different receptacles, and I don't know if there's any sort of best practices for out on the beach, because I think, again, that is a challenging place between the amount of use and then the wind and other animals and other conditions out there. But I think it'd be great to, I know, just like I said, from being on this board for many years, that's been something that had come up in the past, and we never really got any sort of direction on why we're where we are with what we use out there.
All right,
So,
well, that's good to know. Yeah, we'd certainly try to have a conversation about that. We'll get everybody we need to.
I just want to follow up something you just said, our liaison being in solid waste.
Mr. Maxwell?
Wouldn't it be more appropriate to have our liaison be in sustainability?
Well, sustainability is part of the Office of Innovation, which is under me. We just do not have the sustainability coordinator position filled at the moment.
It doesn't look
Oh,
like it
so-
right now, but he has a lot of
Yeah,
hats on.
but it's
Right.
within, it's still within,
So you're not going to keep this hat on in the interim? You're going to pass it off to solid waste until we get a sustainability person?
no, so
When we get a
I
sustainability
think
coordinator.
we'll talk about the sustainability, how sustainability works through this, with the Office of Innovation, my role on this board versus that individual's role on this board. I think that's part of the conversation that makes sense to have. But I don't anticipate not ever being involved with this group if we do transfer it. I do think that there's some value in having some sense of some understanding of the budget that is beyond our own department, understanding how it affects these other areas. So I think that will be useful to you all to see some of the connections that you might not see normally.
I think it would be useful, but I don't think that means that we'd have to have the liaison. I know it was a better scenario when we had a sustainability person as our liaison than when we had a wastewater, whatever.
Engineering.
Yeah. It worked much better with a sustainability.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be from solid waste, it would be Office of Innovation,
Our liaison would still
a
be.
combination of
someone
myself or whoever the, innovation officer is and the sustainability person. So, that side of the house is the one that would be the liaison, not the solid waste side.
Okay.
The solid waste just happens to be,
Yes, I apologize. if
the other
I'm
hat that I'm
confusing
currently
you.
wearing.
That was the case. I just was saying that because currently that's what
And
he's up to. Yeah.
One of the issues too is, we did send in a letter, and I didn't see the response about the seagrass request that we made to city council, that we brought to city council for the waters right off of the Imagine Clearwater.
There was a response.
Yeah, I heard somebody, the response was, we're not in charge of that, and
Yeah,
Something like that,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I think that was essentially the response. is
so.
That there is mooring, or that there are limitations to mooring in the area, and if we wanted to pursue more, that would have to be through,
Yeah.
I think, the Coast Guard or other.
okay, I'll take a look into that a little further and get some
And that it
information
met,
about it. Yeah.
there was not a problem identified. It's what my memory is faulty, so.
Well, I'll say this, especially with more of the seagrass reports that came out, that
Right.
that our area it did decline, but the decline was a lot less than throughout the rest
Well,
of
that's
the Tampa Bay
comforting.
area, right?
That
But it was a slight decline where it was
Yeah.
a more.
That was a 2020
larger-
report, too.
Larger
I mean,
decline.
I think we haven't really don't have data since 2020. Wasn't that a 2020 report that, anyway, and John, our water expert here, is not here with us today, but, yeah, I think that was from 2018 to 2020, and, it's been in the news, the seagrass decline in the Tampa Bay area is a worrisome trend, and I just, I'll say this in my last comments, though. We're going to have a speaker coming in with Suncoast Sierra Club in April on seagrass, and on that decline in the water quality, its effect on water quality and ecosystems. So, it's been in the papers recently. I don't know if you've seen them all, but there's been several articles on seagrass decline, and I just think maybe we want to pick that up and see if I think that our request was, I bet the letter.
Well, I'll say this, that a lot of what we got is what was presented in the newspaper, in those reports, that's the same report that we've gotten that we had already, so there's not going to be any new information out yet. To have another, that's my understanding, is that from what was printed and what that article was based off of was a lot of the report that we got. The report that we were given was more strategic for our area, but it was based on the same information that we got. There's only a couple of groups that do the work that is required to put those reports together.
Looking at that report, yeah, it's a 2020 map. So, I don't know, I'll be asking the Tampa Bay Estuary folks in April, and I think, we'll wait till John Thomas comes back and, and see what he said, but I think he's got things to say.
Yeah, we'll
That's my
see if
guess.
we can get, if there's any other updated information, let me see what it is that we have, and it's good to have on the radar for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll just put out that April 17th, Suncoast Sierra Club started meeting once a month again, and we have speakers, and we've got Sheila Scalero coming from Tampa Bay Estuary. She's a marine botanist who's going to do a presentation on the seagrass decline in the Tampa Bay area, and that's April 18th, Tuesday, 7 o'clock, Caledonia Brewery. So,
Okay. Do we have anything else on the near-term planning discussion? From
Conference
us
plan,
or
of course,
anything
is the
from
May,
us?
it
Okay.
will be the May conversation, yeah.
I have
Yeah,
a question. So we brought up Imagine Clearwater, and it's so exciting. It's going to open in July. And I was just curious about their sustainability plan.
Yes, so Melody and I met with them last week. We received the plan about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And so we started looking at it and are working on some notes to them to, try to make sure that it's aligned with green print and it's, we've got some connection to it. So our plan is, and really that there's some connection to not only the Ruth Eckerd side of it, but also the park side of it, because we're, of course, going to have an element of this too. There'll still be events in the park itself. I think we want to try to be either consistent or better, right, with their plan, right, and probably better, so we need to try to make sure that our side of the sustainability plan makes a lot of sense for the events we're throwing on the other side of the park, not in the amphitheater. So Melody was taking a pass at it this week. We'll have something to discuss with you all at the April meeting, which is good. So it's a good thing we didn't cancel the April meeting. Now, so council will have had that on the Monday of that week. You'll be able to see it on the Wednesday, but we'll get it to you prior, so you'll be able to make individual review of it. We'll have our conversation, our EAB meeting on the 19th, which would be the day before the council meeting. So
it'll be really fine-tuned.
I'll be right between the two, right? So just fair warning on that. Now, I know there's not comments at the work session, and they're typically, it would be the council meeting, but just wanted to make sure you're aware they will see it right before you and probably have some conversation about it at that work session prior to your meeting. But we will get it to you as soon as we have it, and we have to have it before March 21st. So as soon as we get it, we'll pop it over to you.
Yeah, and it'd be good for us to do a little homework, I guess, if we're going
Absolutely,
to be
yeah.
at the work session, so that we can have
Yep.
a little bit of insight.
Yep, and we'll be available if anybody has any questions. Individually, obviously, we can have those discussions.
That's great. Yeah, it would be great to be, to ensure we'll have ocean-friendly events in the Sound and at Coachman Park. So. All right, any other near-term planning discussion items? Anything from the public? Please step forward. Slowly and surely. Thank you, Brian.
Well, stiff. Thank you so much for going over those items. I sent all of you an email here earlier today, and a number of those items you've already been talking about, which is fantastic. One that wasn't necessarily talked about that would seem that would be high on your kind of looking ahead list, which would include this year, I think, would be the new City Hall. So sustainability includes solar, but a lot of other things as a part of that. And I guess I would also encourage you as a board to have the expectation that you're getting updates on synergistics from a savings standpoint, whatever they are, or whatever is the appropriate way to capture those, whether through energy numbers and/or dollar numbers. It's interesting listening to you talk about the increase in rates, and that makes a lot of sense. The other one that hasn't been mentioned so far that might be worth some discussion would be EV ordinances, EV charging related ordinances. So one of what I would consider to be a model in the area is what Largo has for some of their EV charger ordinances for buildings of a certain size, whether they are city buildings or whether they are businesses or whatever the case is.
Is that for new construction?
Yes,
Or-
that's for new construction, is my understanding. And so they have it for different size buildings, and there's the 3 levels of EV capable versus EV ready versus having the EV chargers installed. One example of EV maybe ready, I'm not sure, either EV capable or EV ready, I heard, Micah, you mentioned with the garage there. So that's an example of that. And it certainly can be something that will support Greenprint goals and enable future work. And so not everything all has to be done at once. Thanks so much for bringing up the Green Fund. That, I think, is something that can help really generate a lot of, again, kind of focus back on savings that can be re-implemented, whether they are out to the public or within, the city's responsibilities. And the last one that I'll bring up that I didn't actually send it to you, I don't think, relates to water quality, similar to Tampa Bay Estuary Program and Seagrass's red tide. So we're all experiencing live right now, here over the last couple of weeks, red tide. And of course this impacts our community, and having that as an ongoing conversation or topic to understand what are the contributing factors and what we as a community can do to help improve the situation, because we do have the capability of improving the situation. So I'd encourage you to think about that.
Limiting nutrients, runoff,
Yeah,
nutrients.
all those things.
Oh, you can keep talking if you had something else, if you had some, oh, okay. Oh, all right, very well. Thank you very much. And yeah, I agree, Brian, thank you. I think red tide is something our board has, in the past, we've had presentations on. I think if there are some things that we can do, we should hear whatever it is possible. And if there are, I think it has changed. It feels like there used to be season for red tide, and now it seems unending. So, yeah, maybe we can find out some
Maybe a good opportunity during both water conversations about the watersheds and also related to some of our master plans related to public utilities. They've been working hard on their reclaim master plan, their water reclamation master plan, their water production master plans, all their master plans. And some of those have some pretty significant potential impacts to what we're talking about.
Maybe the Parks and Rec master plan too, because our lands, our public lands are something that would be the first thing maybe
Yep.
to look at.
Yep, as it relates to fertilizers and
Right, limiting
yeah,
nutrients.
absolutely, yeah.
I have another request for information that we get on an ongoing basis. We did the Ready for 100 initiative, and could we get any update on that on an ongoing basis? The implications of how the city has adapted to it or how they're incorporating it. It touched upon everything else we've talked about here, but what happened to it after we passed it? What's going on now?
Yeah, and that might be part of the Greenprint update that Melody gives us quarterly.
Yeah, we can probably fold something in with Synergistic and Greenprint and Ready for 100 all sort of wrapped up in some sort of update, certainly.
That would be great.
A lot of homework. All right,
Oh,
yeah,
one more
yes.
thing. We sent a letter to city council about changing the motorboat races to be outside of sea turtle season.
Yeah.
Did we ever get anything back on that?
No,
Could we follow up on that?
This is the Superboat.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's called Superboat anymore, but it's whatever
You know
that
what I'm
is.
talking about, yeah.
I thought the response was that it was planned, a year or more in advance, and it would be, too hard to change.
I didn't hear any response. I mean, I understand that there is planning, but our letter addressed that we would appreciate, some plan.
Sea turtles
the
are gonna be
future.
there every year,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any other?
I had a whole long list of things to talk about, and you hit every single one of them, except for the Ready for 100 and the sea turtles, yeah.
Excellent.
EAB bingo? All right. We'll move on to item 4.4, board member discussion items. I think this is very similar to I think, again, dovetails from our planning discussion, because I have some items here that I wasn't sure if I bring them up,
Me either,
or do
yeah.
I just bring them up? So, I'll bring them up now. And I think you kind of touched on it. These are some of the things that we've talked about previously, and maybe moving forward, we'd like to see something with them. Pesticide, herbicide presentation, find out what is used before trying to figure out any decision that our board would make on what we would oppose or support. But I think it would be great to find out what is being used by Parks and Rec or whoever else to, like Glenda said, on public lands. And then cigarette ban. The legislature has given a little bit of opening for home rule for communities to draft bans regarding cigarette smoking on the beach and places like that. I believe the county has been pursuing and this. I know other beach communities were looking at pursuing this legislation, but kind of decided not to because of enforcement being an issue. But I think I would like to get a presentation to find out if it's something that we can pursue and if it's something that makes sense for our community and what the support would be. I think from an environmental standpoint, there's a lot of litter that's generated from cigarette butts, and I don't know if this would be the cure, but it's something that we can and should at least look at. And with the with Tallahassee giving us the opportunity to put something together, we should take advantage of that. And then the other stuff would be, I don't want to take this from Sheila, but I want to make sure composting and compost bin program, if that's something that we've had in the past, if it's something that we're going to continue to roll out and increase, and then, the citywide composting. And then the only other two things were our field trip meetings. We've talked about Cooper's Bayou and Lake Bellevue. And Cooper's Bayou, the city spent millions of dollars on that property out there. I believe FDOT had plans in the past to raise some of the road to help with the water flow in that area. It'd be great to find out if that project's still on, where that project is in terms of things.
I believe we have a engineering project that is currently looking at Cooper's Bayou and what the future improvements need to be on that site. Let me see where that is, and that may be
It's been a couple years since we went out there initially. We went out there for a field trip meeting briefly, shortly after the city purchased the property a few years back. And then as part of it out there, I was driving over 49th Street Bridge, and it was lit up over there like I don't know, like a soccer field. It was, and I know that there's the Nova Southeastern University there, but I don't know what the rules are for light pollution. There's eagles' nests and other, animals in Cooper's Point and Cooper's Bayou there, and it looked like daytime over there, and this was, very much night. that these lights were on, very bright. They're just extremely bright lights out there, and so I just would be interested to know how that interaction is with the natural habitat there. And then, Lake Bellevue, we had talked about a water management plan for the lake out there, supporting the neighborhood. And I think it'd be great for us to go out there for one of our field trip meetings to find out what the water management plan is, and just go out there.
You said we're gonna do it, and we haven't done it.
Yeah. So that was everything for myself, so I don't know if that got anything off of anyone else's list, but
Yeah, I included 3 items that were just emailed to me by various members.
oh, okay.
One was on the sustainability conference, and I don't remember, Glenn, was it you that sent me the item on the sustainability list?
I
Or
sent
is it-
some stuff recently
Was
to
that it? Yeah.
Rosemary, she probably forwarded it to you.
Okay.
But when you talked about, my thought about the sustainability conference was, how could we be aware of it earlier? How could we be more involved? How could we support the effort? But when you talked about getting stuff before this board, ahead of things, that kind of addressed that issue.
Okay.
It was not so much the conference itself, it was like, what it was, but how do we get ahead of this stuff?
Yeah.
And you talked,
Now, I will say that as it relates to the sustainability conference, my understanding is that there is a desire, I guess it was always the neighborhoods conference that had a sustainability theme. Pardon me. My understanding is that next year they're looking at not necessarily doing a sustainability theme, but doing, some other theme. Melody, do you know what the theme was?
They were talking about a neighborhoods association, right?
How to start and
How to start,
maintain, neighborhood associations, neighborhood HOAs, condo associations, that kind of thing. Just on, that's what I think they're starting to work on for their next conference. The last 3 better neighborhoods have been sustainability themes. But they're moving away from that now. So I don't know if the sustainability department, I imagine, is quite open to people maybe coming and helping to which we might want to be more involved in, to continue sustainability conferences like that. It was very successful, and I think, I'm a planner, so I was one of the planners, so I just want to, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I think that it was really well done. I'm going to pat Melody on the back for it, and she was fantastic to work with, and she did a wonderful job. And I want to thank the people who were involved in that too. There are people here who were involved in running that. But I don't know, Melody, you can speak to that in terms of our longer-term goals, what the sustainability, department might like.
Yeah, please, come forward. Yeah, is that something
From us
that
for
our board could
future.
support, a sustainability conference,
yeah.
a city-led one?
Yeah, absolutely. So even if we don't have the Building Better Neighborhoods series, we can look at having like a sustainability nuggets kind of workshop, and we have it several times a year. That's something at the back of my mind that I want to do since last year. So if we don't have this big event, we could break it down, our effort, into smaller events like that. And it potentially could touch on different topics each time.
I would suggest an EV car show. I think those are great. I think
Yes.
that's a really great interactive,
Next time I'll get my
engaging
car
way.
there.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you again. I just wanted to say some of my updates really quickly too, as relate to the Red Tide. We have an upcoming stormwater education and outreach program, and we can definitely include the Red Tide messaging, because a lot of people don't know why is there a Red Tide, and as we talk about anti-pollution, I think it's a good time to marry those two ideas together and get people aware. We'll share more next time in April, officially, on my updates.
Perfect. Great. Thank you very much. All right. Any other board member?
I just want to say thank you. I know your plate is way full, and so you've spent almost 2 hours here, and you've obviously been very focused on us, and you've obviously spent a lot of time, and I certainly appreciate it.
No problem.
Certainly. Sheila?
I just have one more question about, it's in regards to the green print policy, Green Point 2.0. There's mention of a fee bait program, and I'm just wondering if we've implemented that policy. I didn't do a lot of digging, but it's a fee that developers will get if they're, for example, remodeling a parking garage, for example, and then they don't put EVs, there's a fee versus someone building something new and having that feature, or maybe someone building something new and not including EVs that were capable or ready or already installed. So
Sort of like carbon credits, paying for things that you're not doing, you just pay
Yeah.
somebody else to do. Yeah.
and creating, that could be a part of the green fund for grants or,
Sure, yeah, so we haven't had a lot of conversation about that yet.
okay.
I will say that there is a great opportunity upcoming related to the comprehensive plan, both making comments about the comprehensive plan in, I guess, May when we have the conversation, but also in the implementation of the comprehensive plan. That implementation will include changes that we're making to the land development code that are related to the comprehensive plan, and that can add in things like that to the code. So that's a great opportunity to do it. This is a great opportunity to start the conversation for sure, absolutely. And any other things that we think we might want to add in there could be the EV chargers, could be anything, right? So for sure.
I think the fee bait, I think that works great to feed into a green fund program too, if you have people who want to rather pay than put in the infrastructure, then other people can use that money for the infrastructure, so, yeah.
It incentivizes.
Yeah,
going
certainly,
green,
yeah. All right, Glenna?
Yeah, I guess the only thing that, I don't even know if it's, I'm gonna bring it up, I brought it up before, the Drew Street, Complete Street. This is a project that's been 5 years in the making, with I was on one of the first committees, to listen to residents and what their concerns were about Drew Street as an HOA president, and that was like 4 or 5 years ago. That project I thought was going forward, and in fact, they've spent, the FDOT and has spent like $400,000 on planning, and they've got $8 million ready to start. And it seems like things are being, it is in question as to whether it's going to move forward based on city council approval, because it was originally approved by the last council, and there are members of this council who are coming out against it. So, there's a split of 3-2 now. With it, the Sierra Club, I can speak for Sierra Club, is in favor of complete streets, and certainly of this Drew Street becoming a complete street, and making it multimodal, make it safe. Nobody is safe on Drew Street riding a bicycle. Pedestrian, the traffic, I have the accident records for 3 years, and they're pretty horrific. And I think there's just, I don't know that there's time for this body or to even get prepped or to understand, to feel like we would take action on this before action is going to be taken by City Council. What is that date? April, I thought it was like the 17th, isn't April 17th, isn't that a Monday?
17th is a Monday. I don't know that we have I'll have to see when the date is. I know we talked about it Monday at the council meeting.
Yeah, it was talked about Monday,
And I don't believe, I think there's a discussion about the letter tomorrow at the council meeting. I think they're supposed to discuss whether or not to send the letter to FDOT, either in favor or not in favor. Well, either send it in favor or not send the letter is my understanding.
so that decision's going to be made tomorrow?
I believe that, unless I missed a discussion
Yeah,
on
I think it was this
changing
week,
that date.
yeah, it was
Do we
supposed
know
to.
Councilmember, do you know?
Tomorrow's council.
Is it in April? Okay. Okay, so it is in April. All
Yeah,
right.
because it's not on the agenda for tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, we talked about it Monday, that's why I thought it might be tomorrow, but.
Yeah, I think it
screwed that
originally
up.
was going to be tomorrow,
Okay.
but it is going to be in April.
Okay.
I think from the standpoint of that, I'm a bicyclist and there is no east-west, there's no safe east-west pathway really from Highway 60 north for a bicyclist to go east-west. We've got trails that go north-south and you can't, they're not going to connect until way up into the north somewhere, and I shouldn't say somewhere, somebody's riding up there. But I just live, anyway, there's not, the complete street is definitely including a 10-foot wide bicycle path where, that where pedestrians and other modes of transportation would be safe traveling that, when considering that, 11% of Clearwater's population does not own a car, and people commute and would like to be able to commute by bicycle and or other modes of transportation that I see on the trails all the time. So I don't know if there's any means for us or, to take any kind of action. I don't know if there's really time for that. I think it's probably going to be able.
So I think if it's the 17th that they're going to discuss it at work session, and then if there's a vote that should be had, it would have to be on the Thursday meeting.
Right.
You would have the meeting
Our meeting's at
the
19.
Wednesday
yeah.
prior,
Day
right, the day
before.
prior, just like we're going to do with the
Yeah.
Ruth Eckerd Hall Sustainability Plan.
Yeah.
So you will have an opportunity to express your opinion to be provided at that Thursday meeting.
So if you want to present
Put it
a
on the-
letter to support, to present to the board, and then we vote on it at the April meeting, you can do that.
That would
and
be
then we
possible.
can,
I
but I don't know how much that's gonna, it's gonna be Wednesday. It'd have to be, I don't know that it would even go to city council in time if we had one and made a vote and support.
And I don't mean to be a wet blanket. I think it's a very important issue. I just think it's out of our scope of responsibilities. I think it's more Parks and Rec than it is environmental.
Well,
But that's my,
I know in green print, it provides for increasing different, increasing
well, there you
bike
go.
mobility and other aspects of travel throughout the community. So I could see where our board from that aspect would be supportive of
Okay.
a project that would try to be increasing the
That's a
use of
good tie-in. Yeah, that's good.
bicycling. But I will say there is the Druid Trail, and though it isn't north of 60, it is just south of 60 and goes east-west.
Yeah, I
so-
ride that trail frequently, and but there's nothing, but crossing 60, and then, you're not going to, it's quite it's kind of dangerous too.
I think for the aspect of it being a safety flashpoint for the neighborhoods along Drew Street, it's extremely important for the neighbors there. And like you said, Glenna, there's accidents or other issues every day along that road and along that stretch. So, I don't know if the design that the Complete Street has is the answer for all that, but what we currently have isn't working. So something has to be done for there. And I think from the aspect of the design that's been presented for there, that area, it does have a tie into the environment. So I can see where we would, if we wanted to have something presented and we wanted to talk one way or the other for it in support or opposition, we could do that. But again, I think the timing might be difficult because it's
Well, what we can
so
do
short,
at
so.
the staff level is inform the council at the time that they have the work session conversation that you all will be considering, taking some action on the issue on Wednesday that we will then provide Thursday. So we will, if that's what you want to do, we will let them know that that's your intent, so they at least know that.
So
Okay.
if we could put it on the agenda for,
We can certainly put it on the
Yeah.
agenda if
Yeah.
that's the
And
will of the
so-
board, right?
Yeah, I think that I think that works.
It-
Yeah,
that-
do that.
That's the basis on which Sierra Club's letter was written for, to provide safer multimodal access, fewer crashes and reduced speed. And the model is going to, has timing, advanced traffic. There's concerns about slowing traffic down, that people are not going to want to, are going to have a hard time getting downtown. And I think with the design, that's not the case. The timing signals are going to be changed, so they're using engineering basically to get that traffic moving. In the meantime, make it safer for people to transport themselves in different ways.
Right. All right. Any other items from the board? All right. I'll open up the discussion to the, yes, please step forward. Brian? Hate to keep making you do this.
Thanks so much for all that great discussion there, including Drew Street. The other thing that I'll mention, Jared, so you mentioned the county looking into banning smoking. So I sit on the Parks Advisory Board for the county, and so we approved that recommendation. I need to follow up on, because I thought it was going to be either February or March that the commission was going to have this put in front of them to vote on it. So I don't know the answer standing here today, but I'll let you know what it is that either they did discuss or when it might be coming up before them. We certainly got a lot of good information to review and discuss through that process. We talked about it at a couple of different meetings. So it's definitely something that I think is a great idea to talk about here, because there's a lot of environmental impacts, obviously, by all the things that get left behind from smoking. So if a lot of you probably have been out on trash pickups, the number one thing that you pick up there on the beach is cigarette butts. That's for sure.
Certainly.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
There actually is, just to add to the conversation, something that we discussed with Pinellas County Solid Waste after we sent the agenda out, and that's that Pinellas County Solid Waste is looking at their ordinance and making some amendments to that countywide solid waste ordinance that, I think they've included a number of environmentally positive elements in at least their conceptual discussion about it with us. So there'll be more to come on that. We'll keep you in the loop on what those changes might be moving forward.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Pinellas Celebrates.
What's that?
Pinellas Celebrates. That's a group? I don't know it.
No, Pinellas Celebrates? I'm sorry, solid waste. I'm sorry, solid waste. I probably, I do that sometimes. I'm a little fast on my talking sometimes, so.
Oh, my
Yes,
God.
I'm sorry, I got a little confused there.
I
Yes,
did have my hearing.
Pinellas County Solid Waste.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Okay, we'll move on to item 5 on our agenda, board members to be heard. I think we've probably exhausted everything we have to say. Yes?
Yes.
I just have two things.
Okay.
I just want to celebrate the, it's like that must have just had that word in my mind, so I was just hearing that. I won't say it was a senior moment. We did have solar in Clearwater, was installed, the very first solar was installed on city property, not sure exactly when, anyway, this spring at Imagine Clearwater and it's, it's down, I think it's the Harbor Master building. So, that's worthy of a celebration. It's very exciting. And there's, plans for maybe 200 solar panels?
I believe the total number is 200. The total cost was, I believe, $258,000 that they had in the GMP for solar panel installation. I believe 200 was the number that they installed,
Yeah.
some on that building and some on various other buildings.
And the other thing is that I'm going to miss the next two meetings, and I am not happy about this. I go out of the country for 5 weeks and I missed two EAB meetings. This is not pleasing me at all. And what I just want to check is, are our meetings being videotaped so that I can watch
Yes.
these? Oh, I feel a lot better. I don't want to miss a minute of it. I've really enjoyed this meeting, and I'm really pleased with the progress we're making.
And Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, the special meetings don't count against board members as it relates to the attendance,
That's a
do
very
they?
good question. I would have to look into that.
Okay.
But that would make sense that it wouldn't count.
There is some,
I know one of two of the meetings is a special meeting.
yes,
Yeah, the May
correct.
meeting.
Yeah, the May meeting would be special. I don't think that counts against that, and council
Yeah.
has the ability to, to deal with things like that. It's not like automatic from what I understand, it then just would at some point.
Yeah, so, because if you
I think it's
miss two
3
meetings or
I think it's 3 in a row or something like that.
half the meetings or something.
But we'll get some clarification on that so you're aware and go from
Okay,
there.
all right, appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was going to say the positive is that I think we're going to have so many meetings this year that
I hope
it'll
so.
even out for you.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, anything?
I'm putting all the meetings down on my
Okay.
calendar now, so.
All right, very well. I was just going to give a couple of events coming up. Nikki Butcher will be at the library this weekend. Her art has been up, so if you want to meet the artist, it's a great opportunity. And then we talked about transportation being part of our environmental initiatives for our board. The Jolly Trolley is free right now for spring break, so if you want to get down to the beach and sit in the Jolly Trolley rather than in your car, that's very well to do that. And then I'll bring it up again at our next meeting, but in April is the Arbor Day tree giveaway, so make sure that you get your 2 trees if you have space for them on your property. So with that, we'll adjourn. Thank you very much.